Hello and welcome to another tutorial from Tindish. In the last video we created this simple holding page using HTML, CSS and a tiny bit of PHP. If you haven't seen that video yet, this is going to be a follow-on from that, so you might want to watch that first. It's linked in the description and I'll put a card up on screen now so you can have a look at that if you want to. The purpose of this tutorial is on the original holding page we had a static background image. It changed every time you refreshed it to something new, but it was just a static background image. What we're going to be doing this time is we're going to be replacing that image with a video that will autoplay when the website is loaded. It'll play in the background and it'll keep looping through, and you have the option to either turn the sound on or turn the sound back off again. So that's going to be what we're doing today, changing a static background to a video background. We'll get straight into it. These are the project files from last time. Again, look at that video if you haven't yet. We had the logo file, had a little favicon file, and then obviously a single index.php file that contains the actual web page itself. So we're going to start off with that, and we're going to go through and make the changes that get rid of the background image and insert a video instead. So the first thing we start with is always HTML, which in this file is towards the bottom because obviously we've got all the CSS styling above it. This is using Visual Studio Code with the Emmet extension to just make writing the code a bit quicker, and the live server extension so that every time you make any changes it will refresh the website display there on the right. Again, I go into these in a bit more detail in the first video, so if you want to know about that then by all means do so. I'll be putting timestamps in the description as well if you just want to fast forward to specific parts of this video. Okay, so we'll crack on. First thing to do is we can get rid of these two divs that contain the background picture. They can just go, we don't need them. It just gives us a blank background. But we need obviously to replace them with some more HTML that will hold the background video. So for this we're going to create a div with a class called video container. And inside that we're just going to put a video with an ID of BG video for background video, and the source is going to be bg.mp4. That's a file that we haven't got yet, but we'll pull those files in a short while. We're also going to give the video tag some properties. We're going to say we want it to autoplay. We're going to say we want to play it in a loop. We're going to say we want to start it muted. And we're also going to want it so it plays inline. A bit of just an overview on videos when they're auto playing. You always want to play them muted. Some vendors get quite aggressive relating to auto playing videos with music in the background. It's to stop things like pop-ups, annoying adverts, things like that, just interfering with the experience. And on some devices, particularly iOS devices, they just won't play auto playing videos in the background that have the volume on. They also won't play them unless the plays inline attribute is on there. So if it wasn't for those two, this video, the background video just would not appear on any iOS device. So it's important to have those in place. We'll save that, and you see obviously nothing's changed yet because we haven't actually loaded that file or put any CSS in. But we'll do that in a moment. In fact, no, actually we'll do it now. So we've got the original files. What we need is a few more files, which I'll just drop in now. We're going to be adding a volume icon on the bottom right, as you can see in the new website, that toggles between sound on and sound off. So we need those two image files. They need to be dropped in. Now I got them from Flat Icon, again, where I get most of my icons from. If you go to that site and just type in volume, you'll see it'll come up with a load of different icons that you can just download and use. So I chose, I think, that one and that one for this particular project. So once you've got those downloaded, I'll just drop these into the folder along with the background video. Now for the background video, obviously you can either use a stock video, or this is best when the business itself has already got a promotional video about their particular product or their particular business. And if that's the case, obviously just drop that in, rename it. So there we have the background video, as you can see that's showing, and we've got these two little icons which we'll be using in a short while. So already, as you can see, we've got the background video in, it's auto playing. The styling obviously is all over the place. It's basically just dropped the video in at whatever size the video is and shoved everything down, but we'll sort that out later. So moving on to a bit more HTML code, we also need to put another div at the bottom just above the footer, which we'll call volume. And that's all we need for that. It doesn't need anything actually in it. That'll all be done by CSS. Okay, so that's as far as the HTML needs to go. We'll move up now to the CSS and we'll go through that and start changing some things that we, again, remove the bits that we don't need, add in the bits that we do. These two items in the CSS, obviously we don't need. That was relating to the background color and the background image. They can go. We do need to create a couple of new variables though. We'll have one called volume icon. This is going to be the height of the volume icon that appears in the bottom right hand of the screen. So in this case we'll do it at 46 pixels. And we're going to have another one which is the volume icon height on mobile, which we're going to have slightly smaller. You could obviously give these relative sizes, rems, ems, you know, a percentage of the vertical width or the vertical height or the horizontal width if you wanted, but for the purposes of this, an actual fixed size works just fine. These bits we can all keep. The background stuff obviously all needs to go because now there's nothing in the background, so we'll get rid of that. And we'll create a new section called video, and here we'll put in all the CSS to do with the video. So as you've seen, the video is already there. It's on the web page and it's playing, but it's a bit all over the place. So we'll add some styling to the video container. We're going to give that a position of absolute. And straight away you can see all that does is it positions the video in a fixed position behind the rest of the website. So now the rest of the website looks as it did before, but the video is now behind everything. But we're going to change a few other things. We're also going to give it a width of 100 VW, visual width, and a height of 100 VH. That's just to make sure that ordinarily it would fill up the screen. It won't do it at the moment because we've got to do a bit more coding with it, but that'll be done shortly. We're also going to give it a Z index. The Z index, as I think I mentioned in the last video, basically says where an item will appear on the Z index, i.e. front to back. So if we put this as a -1, it'll just make sure it disappears behind everything. At the moment you can see it's behind the icon, it's behind the buttons, but it's not behind that text in the middle. So once we do that, it'll just stick it behind the whole content, which is exactly where we need it. One thing you'll also notice is it's got a scroll bar on the bottom, which is very annoying. You don't want a scroll bar on your website. And the way to get rid of that very quickly, we just go back up to the global resets here, just put overflow, and we'll make that hidden. And there you go. Because the video's always going to be overflow in the actual visual part of the page, unless your page happens to be exactly the same ratio as the video, you need to put overflow hidden just to say basically if it can't be seen on the visual part of the screen, we're not interested in it, get rid of it. Don't add scroll bars, don't let me scroll to it, I don't want to see it. So that's for that, the actual video container. Now the video itself, obviously that needs some CSS as well because that's not looking particularly great at the minute. Again, we give that a position of absolute. And in order to get the video to centralize on the screen, we have to do a little bit of trickery with it. We basically need it so that it positions it with the left and the top dimensions in the actual center of the screen, which will put it down here. And then once we've done that, then we can just apply a transform to it, and we're going to translate that by minus 50% and minus 50%. So what that does then is it makes sure that the video is centralized. That's the quickest and easiest way to do it. There are other ways, but that way keeps the video in the center. As you can see, it's not filling the screen yet, but whatever you do with the window, that video is staying dead central, which is obviously what we need. And that, like I say, that's the quickest and easiest way to do it. We do need to make it so it fills the screen though, and the best way to do that using this method is to put a couple of quick media queries in. So we're going to be looking at the max aspect ratio. So the max aspect ratio is 1920 by 1080. What we're going to say then in that instance is to make the video height to be 100%. And then we're basically going to do another query which is exactly the same, but with the minimum aspect ratio. And in that case, it's going to be the width that's going to be 100%. So what you're basically saying there is whichever whichever dimension is the priority, the width or the height, make the video to suit. So you can see if you quickly save that, then whatever you do with this, it'll fit nicely. It'll always be centralized. So like I said, that's the quickest, easiest, and as far as I'm concerned, as far as the ways that I've done it, best way to get a video centralized. So our video's there, you can see it's autoplay in the background, it looks great, it's responsive and it sits in the middle, so that's all pretty good. What we don't have though, of course, at the moment is the little icon in the bottom right. We've put it in the HTML, but because there's no CSS to it, it's there, it's just you can't see it and it's not actually doing anything. So what we'll do for that is we'll go just above the footer and we'll put some CSS in for that. So we'll have this for the volume area. So we created an ID called volume. We're going to start giving this some properties. The position is going to be fixed because we want it always to stay in that bottom right hand corner. But the actual position is going to be based on the variable that we set at the top. In this case, I think it was 40 pixels. So to keep it square and to keep it in the same place all the time, we're basically going to apply this 4 times. We're going to have the bottom, the distance up from the bottom to be the size of the icon, the distance in from the right to be the size of the icon, and the height and the width to also be the size of the icon. That way, if you want to make the icon slightly bigger so it's easier to see, if you want to make it slightly smaller so it doesn't get in the way as much, you just change that one variable at the top and that'll move the icon and resize it. We're also going to, if we save that, you'll see there's no change because although we've given the div a size, there's nothing actually in it, so there's nothing there to see. So we'll give we'll give it a background repeat of no repeat because we only want to see the icon once. We're going to make the background size again. We're going to use the variables and it's going to be volume icon, and again volume icon. Get rid of that space. And we're going to give it a background image because we still haven't done that yet. I'm going to give it a URL of soundoff.png, which is the name we gave to that file. I hope I spelled it right. So there you go, the little icons at the bottom there. It's in the bottom right because we've given it that fixed position using the bottom and the right properties. It's got a height and a width, which again is using the same variable. No repeat on the background, and the background size again is all using that variable. Like I said, now if we needed to make any changes to the icon for any reason, you can simply just change that there, and it'll make it bigger and move it in. It's just a nice easy way of being able to resize the icon quickly if you want to. And obviously we'll be using it later when we do the media queries and we want to make the icon a bit smaller on mobile. Okay, so moving back down. The only other thing we want to do, it sort of stands out a little bit there, so I would put the opacity of that to be 0.3. We don't really want it standing out. But then what I would say is then on hover, when somebody hovers the mouse over it, we'll change the opacity to 1. And we'll also change the cursor to pointer so people know that there's an action to be had. So there you go, it's currently faded. When you go over it, the cursor changes to a pointer and it gets highlighted. It's snapping a bit between 0.3 opacity straight to 0, and it doesn't look particularly good when it snaps like that. So we'll just add another property to the icon. We'll put a transition of 0.3 seconds in there. So what that does basically is any transition that applies to the volume button, like the opacity change in here, it'll now do slowly. So it just gets it a bit nicer. Just fades in there. Okay, like I said, we need to do a little bit on the media queries. At the moment, when it's mobile size, that icon is still quite big, and it sort of looks a bit in the way on a mobile device. So we'll just add some extra CSS here. I'll just cut and paste that in actually. Oh, didn't want it there, hang on. That's the wrong one. We want it in there, there you go. It just makes it smaller. And again, if we wanted to, we can change the size of the icon on mobile using the variable at the top. So they're just the properties that I used before. I've just changed the variable to the mobile version for those. It's a bit of extra code typing, but it's a nice, quick and easy way to change the size of the icon if you need to. And depending which icon you use, some might look better bigger, some might look better smaller. Okay, let's make the page big again. So from the point of view of the HTML and the CSS, that's it. You can see the page is loading correctly. That icon is showing as it should, but of course it doesn't actually do anything. We haven't given any instructions as to what happens when that gets clicked. And in order to do that, we need to use Javascript. So we're going to add a Javascript section at the bottom. We'll just do that at the end of the main HTML, just before the body tag is closed. And here we're going to be putting the code that gives some action on the user end to be able to turn the video sound on and off. So the first thing we need to do with JavaScript is create a event listener that will wait until the document is loaded. And once the document is loaded, it will then run this function inside here. And the first thing we're going to do with the actual function itself is attach it to a user action. So again, we'll go document get element by ID. We'll search for the volume ID, which is obviously the ID we gave the little volume icon there. And we'll attach it to the command on click. So once the document's loaded, if somebody clicks on the volume icon, then it's going to do whatever's contained inside this function. So the first thing we're going to do is create a couple of variables and link those to items on the actual web page, elements of the DOM. So the first one we're going to call vid, and we're going to link it to document get element by ID, and this is going to be look for the background video element. I'm going to create another variable, and we're going to call that icon, and we're going to link it to, again, document get element by ID, and this is going to be linked to the video ID. Not the video, sorry, the volume ID. Then we're going to use an if statement, well, an if else statement actually. So what we're going to say is when that's clicked, we need to look at that variable we just created, the video one, and see if the muted property of that video equals true or not. So if the video is muted, we're going to do one thing. If it's not muted, we're going to do something else. So let's assume it's muted. The first thing we want to do is change that property to false. And the other thing we want to do is use the other variable that we've just created and change the background image of that to a different URL. In this case, the sound on URL. And then if the video muted property isn't true, obviously it's going to be false, so we just swap these around. In that case, we want to change the muted property to true and change that to off. So we'll refresh that, and now when we click the button, you can see it turns the volume on or off, and also toggles the icon. And that's all there is to it. So that's the end of the tutorial. That is how to change from a static background image to an auto-playing video. It'll play full screen, it'll play on all devices, it'll look good on all operating systems, iOS, Android, Windows. It'll automatically scale, and it should be quite easy and intuitive to use without being intrusive, obviously, or negatively affecting the user experience. So like I say, that's the end of the tutorial. If you liked it, do please slap a like on the video. Subscribe if you want to see some more. There's going to be a few more videos coming. For other things that you might want to add to a coming soon page, I think the next one due to be released is how to add a countdown timer, because coming soon pages often benefit from countdown timers. Then we might do others where it creates newsletters. You can sign up to a newsletter and things like that. But if you want to see more on this, do subscribe, do click the bell icon so you get notified when these new videos come up. And if you've got any suggestions of things that you'd like to see, whether it's on this particular holding page, another expansion of this, or just something else in general, drop us a comment and we'll see if we can do it in the next video. Thanks for watching.